So as you already said, my name's Grant Skeldon. I am from Dallas, Texas. I know you guys don't like the Cowboys. The good news is I don't care either, and I don't like them either. So I never got into football. My mom's the youngest of 14. She's Mexican Army on her side of the family. And then my dad's from South Africa, so he never watched football. But I learned very quickly the Cowboys don't seem to win, and it just makes you mad to be a Cowboys fan. And so I just never got into that sport. But I got a little bit about me is I recently, I keep saying recently, 4 years ago, I got engaged. I got married in Estes Park, Colorado. It snowed on the one single day that we were there. If you guys know those like heat packs that you break, I'm sure y'all know it better than us in the South, but those are all over our outfits. I know these pictures look beautiful, but felt awful. Like it was, we did not know it was gonna look as good as it is. My wife was such a trooper to still do the wedding. And then I'm a part of a church plant called Way Church, where we're seeing hundreds of young people join us, and we're a year old, and we've seen almost over 300 people give their life to Jesus over the last year. And God is on the move in the next generation. I really want to encourage y'all of what God is doing, because often we hear so much about the next generation and how things are not going well. And there's a lot of doom and gloom about the future of the church. I don't know if you guys ever hear these statements, but I'm a pretty conversational speaker, if you will. So I'm going to try to engage y'all. The great thing is y'all seem like y'all like to laugh, which is good. Y'all are very connective. So if y'all can give me some feedback, if you've ever heard any of these sayings when it comes to the next generation of the future of the church. In the last few years, have you heard anyone say things like, the church is dying. All the next generation is leaving the church. Anyone? What about, it's an election year. There might even be a civil war. It's a little tense. Let's see, what are some other ones? Let's see. The church is so divided, worried about the future. I always say the euphemism way, or the positive way to freak out, even as a Christian, is what we'll say is, you know what, I just see all this. I just hope Jesus comes back. Let's just pray Jesus comes back. Do y'all ever see that or say that? It's a little bit of concern for the future of the church, the next generation, but I'm here to tell you to not have a Murphy's Law type of faith. Murphy's Law is anything that can go wrong, will go wrong. But I would say the Bible doesn't tell us anything that can go wrong, will go wrong. Even though we've seen some hard and difficult things happening in the last few years, even with the next generation, the Bible doesn't say anything that can go wrong, will go wrong. The Bible we read says, surely goodness and surely mercy will follow me all the days of my life. And so one of the biggest things I can encourage you is to have a surely type of attitude towards the future of the church, because that's so magnetic and attractive to a generation that hears all the doom and gloom. You know, the word surely, I always think of the movie Airplane, where and surely in the Bible, there's this assumption that they say not to assume, but the Bible makes these surely statements like, again, surely goodness and mercy will follow me, or as surely as the sun will rise, God will come for us. Do you have that kind of faith, or are we going to sound just like the world when it comes to the future? I've heard it said this way, is that fear is what if? Like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happened? While faith is even if. Even if this happens, I'm still going to worship God. Even if this happens, I'm convinced God is going to move. So instead of doom and gloom, I would say the best is yet to come. If you could have that kind of posture, it's so magnetic to the next generation. And I got to see just you guys from first service to second service, and I'm so encouraged by the community and the connectiveness. There's a lot of churches, they're in and then they're out. And for here, I was seeing people do community. And my hope today is, could I help build a culture of multi-generational discipleship? Because I'm convinced this is a church that wants to make disciples. And I would just say, seeing hundreds of young people who were hungry for God the last few days, I know they're hungry to grow and be developed. Now, we can be honest, some young people are punks. Not all of them are great. I'm not trying to advocate that they're all great. There's a lot of punks out there. But let me tell you some truth too. The disciples were punks. These dudes were not doing it right all the time. They're arguing for the left hand and the right hand of the Father. They get so involved in trying to find out who's the greatest among them. James and John invite their mother to fight on their behalf with Jesus. That's like super, they talk about how millennials and Gen Z are bringing their parents to their interviews. That's what we saw with the disciples. Or you might be like, well, I want to see some like obedience or humility and then I'll pour into them. The disciples were cutting people's ears off 3 years in. That's not the best evangelism strategy, in my opinion. Like, these guys are denying Jesus, abandoning Jesus. Oh, the biggest one, they fell asleep when he's sweating blood. Like, these dudes were punks sometimes as well, but Jesus kept discipling them. He kept pouring into them, and those seeds eventually grew, and God grew them. And there's things I'm sure you're doing for the next generation and for your kids, your grandkids, and hopefully even more young people in this church that my hope is, like, could we bring a little more intentionality? Because in my opinion, we don't have a next-gen problem. What we really have is a discipleship problem. We could get obsessed with how to reach one generation, millennials, Gen Z. Now it's Gen Alpha. Like there was the X generation, Y generation, Z generation, Gen Z. I always thought Jesus was going to come back after Gen Z, but then they just started the Alpha generation. That's, I think, 13 or 14 and younger. Which I'm like, it's crazy. Is there going to be a beta generation? So I'm like, dude, why did y'all start at X? Why didn't y'all start at A in the first place? But this is like a time where we can hopefully normalize discipleship because you can become obsessed with how to reach one generation, but they change and it moves quickly. Or we can become consumed with the Great Commission, which is go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. Those were Jesus' last words. My grandma's like 99 years old. She's in Wichita, Kansas. My mom's been with her the last week, and they really thought that she was probably going to pass this week. And it looks like today she's getting out of the hospital, but she's been there for a week. And I got to assume, and I just know because my mom's been keeping us updated, is my mom's like attentive to anything that Grandma Francis is saying right now. Like her last words, we don't choose our last words poorly. We think about like, what do we want to say about the person that we want to remind them? And what do we want to charge them to do? And when it comes to Jesus, his last words were that, go and make disciples. But often we don't have those kind of relationships. I want to point to a couple stories where we see the power of mentorship, discipleship, or at least just guides. Any movie people here, like loves movies, watches movies? I'm a big movie person. I always watching a movie. These are some pretty iconic movies of our day. Anyone fans of some of these movies? Shout out the ones you like. Like when you're clapping, which one is it? Rocky. Lord of the Ring, Rocky. Oh yeah, Rocky would make sense here. That's funny. That's funny, yeah. I need to see that statue. Okay, so all these stories are amazing stories, not just because of the young person, but it's because of the older people that help them. These stories, without these older people, do not become great stories. You take out these individuals from the story with them, that never gets started. Like, Harry Potter, without Hagrid showing up, is just living in that closet for the rest of his life. Luke Skywalker's just looking at the moon, kicking the sand, wishing he could go and do something big, but Obi-Wan Kenobi shows up. These guys are like linchpins to the story and the journey. I'm sure you had people like that in your life too, who, if you take them out of your story, you don't become the person who you are, and you don't get to where you are. Like, they changed who you are and where you are by, maybe it was encouragement they gave you at the right time. Maybe it's identifying giftings in you and encouraging you to fan that into flame. Maybe it was opening doors for you. Maybe it was connecting you to the right individuals. For some of you, you had certain older people who thrust you into responsibilities you did not deserve. And you could talk to them now and think, what in the world were you thinking letting me do that at this age? And these are the things that develop us as young people into mature believers. And so I want to give you guys like 2 to 3 minutes to think about this question. What person or people, but especially is there a person who comes to mind who heavily impacted who you are today and maybe why you are where you are today? I want to give you 2 minutes just to talk to your neighbor. That's one person talking to one person. So quick math, that's 1 minute and 1 minute. Don't talk 2 minutes and then they get to say 10 seconds. But just who comes to mind for you who maybe encouraged you at the right time, spoke life into you, opened doors for you, became like a mentor to you, that if you took them out of your story, you wouldn't become who you are today. Turn to your neighbor. One-minute warning. Thirty seconds. All right, 5 seconds, 5 seconds. So hopefully you got a moment just to even remember and be reminded of certain people that invested in you. And I always like that practice of just remembering, whenever God moves, he often moves and prompts people. So those people were sent into your story to play a pretty pivotal role. And I would encourage you to maybe even text them today. There's the story of Jesus with the 10 lepers. And it said he healed these 10 lepers, but only one of them came back to say thank you. And I'm not saying that none of y'all have said thank you. I'm sure you have, but I've always encouraged people when we think about those individuals who helped us get to where we are today. You never know what they're going through or what kind of day they're having. And when you just have people who you've impacted, or when you planted seeds and they come back and say thank you, hey, some type of text of hey, I know it's been a while maybe, but I was just thinking today about how you did this for me, and I really want to tell you how much that meant to me, and I'm just appreciate you. I want to tell you, consider doing that today for that person. So I do think all of us want to do the Great Commission. We see the stories in the Bible. We see the disciples. We see what Jesus did. But there are some common reasons that it's hard for us to do this. To make disciples is not normal as much. It's not. If you meet a Christian today, especially in an American church, if you say, hey, are you part of a church? Then you could probably expect that they might be a part of a small group. That's a little bit more normal and expected. Maybe that they come regularly, maybe that they give, maybe that they bring people here and there. They definitely pray for individuals. They want to know the Lord. But it's not as common to meet people that have this clear discipleship relationship with someone younger in the faith. And what I've found is often one of the biggest reasons why is that we just don't have time. If I ask, hey, why is it that you don't have a relationship like that? They'll say, I don't have as much time. And that's true. We don't have as much time. That's a whole different sermon series. I always jokingly ask people who are married, have kids, have a full-time job. You guys tell me, if you're married, have a full-time job, you have kids, do you guys feel like you have a lot of time? Are y'all thinking tonight, man, what am I going to do this week with all my free time? I have a feeling you're thinking, I am trying to slow down and I just don't know how I'm going to do it this month. And once again, I feel like I've got way too much to do. And so it's hard to make disciples because you got to add one more thing to your calendar that's already so busy. And here's my encouragement, or a little bit of direction, is we got to differentiate mentorship and discipleship, because I think we confuse discipleship with mentorship. And mentorship is hard if you don't have time. It's a very powerful thing, but it's not the same exact thing as discipleship. I would say that mentorship is adding something to your calendar. Again, that's going to be hard if you're super busy. While discipleship is including someone in your calendar. That small little nuance is a huge deal because you may not have a lot of time to add one more thing to your calendar, but would you be vulnerable enough and make yourself available to include someone in the things you're already doing? Mentorship often looks like this, where we're like looking at a very busy calendar and we're saying, hey, let me see if I can find some time. Would one of these times work for you? I don't have many options, but maybe this will work. While discipleship is saying, hey, I've got a lot on my plate. If you'll move your schedule around mine, we can do this. Did the disciples, do you think, do you feel like they moved their life around Jesus, or that Jesus moved his life around them? I would say it seems like Jesus went, and those who wanted to follow, followed. The rich young ruler could have been like the 13th disciple, in my opinion, because Jesus didn't always say to everyone, do this and come and follow me. He often said, do this and go and sin no more. Don't tell anyone, go tell everyone. But this person, the rich young ruler, he said, sell everything you have and come and follow me. But he wasn't willing to change the direction and where he is and where he's going. Again, I'm saying not all young people are ready to be discipled, but there are, I believe, faithful, available, teachable, hungry young people that are in your life. Like, I'm just gonna be honest with y'all, I saw it the last couple days at this gathering y'all did with the Zeal conference. I'm gonna be really honest with y'all, I was training them in how to trick you into discipling them. But what would be even better is if they didn't have to pursue you to disciple them, but you pursued them like Jesus pursued the disciples. It'd be revolutionary in the church, and especially in Delaware County, if the church was like, we are gonna try to move the needle on discipleship relationships here. And like I said, I don't see relationships like I just saw from the first service to second service. So you already do relationships pretty well, I think, for a church. This hopefully will just add a little more intentionality so that there is more discipleship relationships. Paul talks about this in 1 Thessalonians when he says, because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. I think that's pretty powerful for Paul to say, like, I didn't just share the gospel, because most of us in ministry, to share the gospel is the most powerful thing you can share with someone. But him to say, I didn't just do that, I also shared my life. I included them. And you guys have a generation that wants to see authenticity. So in a sense, it's like, you're not just sharing the gospel, you're like showing them the gospel. The hard part is a lot of us don't feel like, well, I'll get into this in a second, actually. There's a concept of being discipleship being caught more than it's taught. That's this kind of follow me discipleship. For example, mentorship is come and meet with me. Discipleship is come and follow me. But often in the church, we are limited in what we can offer. If church just becomes Sunday, we often on Sunday can't say come and meet with me or come and follow me. That has to happen Monday through Saturday or Sunday night. But at church, it's not come and meet with me or come and follow me. It's often come and listen to me. Small groups or definitely Sunday. And so it requires the church to be the church, because if it's just the ministry leader saying, come and listen to me, or we often turn evangelism into not me share the gospel, but come and listen to my pastor. And that's not bad. It's just God has empowered you to go and make disciples. He has empowered you to go and share the gospel. I want to make a point of the limitations of just the staff being the ministers of Delaware County and show the power of when the church fully engages in discipleship. I asked Anna, who are some of the theologians that are kind of in the church who are kind of also funny people, and you guys have no idea that you're coming up here, but Keith Schleifer, can you come up here real quick? And Nate Disbro. Can you grab that mic right there? Nate Disbro, where are you at? Seriously, these guys don't even know me. They don't even know I know their name. So this is, all right, Grant.
Nice to meet you.
Can you guys give it up for our guys here? So we're talking about come and listen to me, and I just wanted to ask two members of this church. I said who were kind of more funny people so that they can be okay with being on stage and maybe it being a funny situation. We'll see. Simple question. Were you at church 4 weeks ago? Just 4 weeks ago?
I don't know what was going on 4 weeks ago. I think I was. But,
yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, here's the simple, easy question. What was the sermon about?
I don't think I was here 4 weeks ago.
Jesus.
Yeah. All right. What, again, I don't want to put you on a really hard position. Like, this is easy stuff. Like, I'm not asking 8 weeks ago, 3 months ago. How long have y'all been coming to this church?
Long time.
Like over a decade?
Yeah.
So I'm not even asking 10 years ago, just 4 simple weeks ago. So now that you got a little bit more time to remember, other than Jesus, the Sunday school answer from elementary school, what else was some of your favorite things that Bob labored and went in prayer and prepared that message that you really, really liked?
The quotes.
The quotes, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
All right.
And the verses.
Okay, yeah, the quotes and the verses, go ahead.
I don't even know if I'm going to answer this. I don't know if I was here 4 weeks ago. I got to be honest with you. I'm sticking to my story, guys.
Okay. Can you guys give it up for these guys? Thank you. Sure. You can take it. Yeah. As you can, now I want you to turn to your neighbor and tell them, what was your favorite part of the sermon 4 weeks ago? Let me go ahead and stop you. I'm joking, because you don't remember. And it's not that you don't remember anything. There's some of y'all that are like, I do remember. I wish I could go up there and tell them. But here's the thing. It's not that that Nate and Keith like just didn't listen at all. He did say he was there, and then he said he wasn't there, and then he doesn't know where he is. But in the education world, they've actually done some studies to find out how we retain information. And there's actually only a 5% retention rate for lectures, for sermons like I'm doing right now. And so our mind, especially in a content-saturated world, it's hard to remember all the different content. And so he was right. It was probably about Jesus. That's probably a good guess. Then there's a 5% retention rate, though. For reading, there's a 10% retention rate. For audio and visual and demonstration, there's a 20% retention rate, then 30%. So that's why I love slides, because you kind of helps people remember it a little bit more. Even doing a demonstration like I just did. You guys might, in a month from now, not remember the sermon, but if they said, hey, what did Grant speak about? You might say discipleship. And wasn't that the guy who brought up the people who didn't know anything about the sermon? Like, you'll remember that demonstration. And so these are ways of learning, but they're generally passive learning. Like, you don't have to lift a finger to learn this way. It's more we prepare and then you sit and listen. And it can build almost like a entertain me type of relationship. Like, it doesn't have to happen, but it does run a temptation of creating consumer Christianity. And I do think the way Jesus did ministry is he's called us not to just receive passively, but to actively, not just even learn, but to multiply and to empower. There's active learning that continues to go down the pyramid, where you have a 50% retention rate for small groups, a 70% retention rate for practicing by doing. This is why some of your mission trips, it could have been 10 years ago you went on a mission trip, and you might not remember the sermon even from 2 weeks ago. And I brought pastors on stage, by the way, and asked them, what did you preach on 4 weeks ago? And they don't remember. So you might not remember what the sermon was about or too much about it, but you never forget some of the moments on a mission field. Because you're learning in a different immersive way, and then you're teaching others. I want to ask you, where do you feel like Jesus operated the most, and where do you feel like the church kind of operates the most today? I feel like Jesus definitely operated at the bottom, but Jesus honestly did every single one of these in a sense. He definitely did the Sermon on the Mount and did a lecture. The reading in the temple, audio visual, I would say he was old school, so he wrote in the sand. And demonstration after demonstration, and he did it all. Like, it's not good versus bad, it's all of it, but it does require the whole church to make disciples. It's not supposed to be the staff that disciples everyone. We build up the body to equip the saints for the work of ministry. We ideally build up this, and it launches you to go and make disciples. I also want to make a point. We can't confuse retention for transformation. So just because maybe someone doesn't remember doesn't mean, I don't know about you, but it was an event, it was a sermon, if you will, that I gave my life to Jesus and was totally transformed. There's Sundays, I'm sure you come to church, and that morning, man, the devil's alive and well in the morning trying to go to church. And there's Sundays when I go to church and I just hear the worship, and God reminds me through the lyrics, and it's like immediately I'm reminded of who I am in Jesus and how he has not left me. And so we can be transformed. So it's not, retention and transformation are not the same. I just believe it requires all of us. The second reason we see why people don't potentially make disciples is they'll say, I don't feel qualified. Anyone feel that way sometimes? Like, I've had people say, I want to pour into younger people. I want to be a part of the solution. I just don't feel like they would want to learn anything from me. What do I really have to offer the next generation? Or they'll say again, I just don't feel qualified to do it. The enemy loves to ask the question, do you feel qualified? Irony is God loves to call unqualified people. That whole Bible is full of that. The disciples, like I said, were definitely not qualified. But the question I don't want you to ask yourself is, are you qualified for discipleship? The question I want you to ask yourself is simple, nuanced change is, are you spiritually a couple steps ahead of the younger generation in this church? Are you spiritually a couple steps ahead of some of the younger people in your life that may come to mind that you could pour into? I would say stop asking if you feel qualified and start asking, are you spiritually a couple steps ahead? And also remember, the weight and pressure is not on you to be perfect. The weight and pressure is on Jesus to be perfect. You're also not making them more like you're making them more like Christ. Even Paul, who was an ultra disciple, if you will, he said, follow me as I follow Christ. He's at the top of the mountain. We're trying to get closer to him, and sometimes I'll say, hey, stumble with me towards Jesus. If you're okay with that, then we can do this, because I'm not going to always get it perfect. John Maxwell said, John Maxwell said, if you want to impress people, tell them about your successes, but if you want to impact people, tell them about your failures. This is a generation that wants to have authentic relationship with people that are authentically following Jesus. Sorry, y'all. The third reason, and this is a big one, is I've had so many people say, Grant, I want to make disciples, but honestly, no one has ever discipled me. How would I be able to give someone something I've never received? That may be the story for you, and that is honestly the story for many, many people. My encouragement would be I don't know if you've ever met someone who's the first Christian in their family. I'm sure I'm in a room with a lot of people that are that, or they're kind of pioneering sincere faith or strong faith for the first time in their legacy of family. I've noticed that those type of people often want to change the legacy for the future of their family. They want to offer like something better for their kids spiritually so that those kids can then offer something even better for their grandkids. Now, they could have this posture of, oh, no one ever did this for me, and no one did that for my parents, and no one did that. Or it's like, all I know is the buck stops here. My kids will grow up in a spiritually more intentional home, and then they can provide something I didn't even receive myself. I think we've got to have that same posture with discipleship. That I want to normalize discipleship in the church. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm going to get canceled for this joke, but I didn't say in the first service, y'all don't cancel me, but I'm leaving right after this. Jokingly, this is not political, I just think it's funny, is sometimes I joke and say, I want to make the commission great again. Because it's actually a great commission, but we don't do the discipleship part, so it's lost its luster in a lot of ways. It's this great commission of making disciples. And when the people of God who even, like if we don't do what our founder did or said to do, we take and rob the Great Commission of the power of what's supposed to happen. If you are worried about the future of the church, if you're worried about the next generation, the best thing we can do is make disciples, is have a posture of discipleship. There's areas of your life you can invite people into. These are different arenas of life, like your personal life, your work life, your family life, your church life. These all are places that you do life already, and I would just ask, do you have a shadow that can join you in some of these places? Like who's going with you to some of the things you do? You already do them, you are busy, but could you just be a little intentional in the sense of not changing your calendar, just including someone in it? It's funny, I want to say this real quick. I said at first service is, you guys know how young people, when you talk to young people, they're so ambiguous, like with their relationships. Sometimes you ask a young person, you guys might have kids or grandkids, and you're like, hey, are you two a thing? And they're like, no, we're not a thing. We're just talking. Okay, well, what's talking? Or so then you're like, okay, so it's called talking now. So then you see another couple is in church. You're like, are you guys talking? No, we're not talking. We're just hanging out. All right, okay, so or you're hanging out, or you may, so like, okay, it's hanging out, or I guess hanging out, then talking, and then I don't even know, is there ever a time when they get together and are more clear? It's like, okay, are you guys hanging out? It's like, no, we're just doing life. We're just chilling. It's like, okay, it's chilling, hanging out, talking. Are you dating? When does it become dating? I get it. It's confusing. It's so ambiguous. It's like, okay, there's no clarity or commitment. And I think in the church, we're similar to that when it comes to discipleship. Like many of us, we don't have a clear relationship with someone younger in the faith. Or I bet, I'm talking to some of y'all, and you're like, no, I have a lot of different things I do with younger people, and I encourage them, I do this. And I'm hoping that you, one, see, hey, there are some elements of this I already do. I just don't know if I saw it as discipleship. Or there's opportunities for me to do this if I just add a little bit more intentionality that I could do this more, and I could invite them to join my life. I know some of the younger people are I think in this section over here. And then the older people are the rest. And I know older people don't like being called older people. So I always try to train young people into tricking older people, and again, not older people, to trick chronologically superior people into how to join their world. And whether I'm talking to young people or I'm talking to older people, like, I would say find out what you like to do in your personal life. Like, what are those hobbies you like to do? And just invite some people with you. Like, some of you guys are a part of the revival in our nation. It's multi-generational, and it's called pickleball. I've never been beaten by so many older people than in pickleball. Men and women. Some of you guys are part of, I don't know, this random thing a lot of people are doing more, sourdough bread. And they're making bread. They've got fungus or yeast or something, and they're got it in a jar. It's like a part of the family. And like, they're doing that, and multiple generations are doing that. Invite someone over to do it. Some of you guys, for me, I found that the guy who I wanted to get discipled by, super busy guy. He was a business leader. I tried to meet with him. It took months to get a meeting with him because he kept having to reschedule. Amazing, amazing leader, but traveled a lot. And he liked to do this thing. I don't know why people like doing this thing. Have you seen people? Do people here like to run? Y'all know that one? It's one of the random hobbies people do. They go outside early in the morning, and it's very dark, very cold, and they just go out and they just start running. And you might be like, well, where do they go? They just come right back. That's where they go, like nowhere. I'm like, oh, I'll be here then, and I'll accomplish as much as you did, and I'll be right here. There's no journey, it's just back. And I've never met a runner that doesn't let you know they're a runner. They let everyone know they're a runner because, they do it early in the morning where no one can see it. So they have to post about it so you can see it. They tell you when they ran. They tell you where they ran. They tell you how fast they ran. Every day, if they do it, they're posting about it. And I saw the guy I wanted to get discipled by was one of those kind of guys. And so I met with him finally after months of rescheduling, and I told him, hey man, I'd love to get more time with you. Like, I feel like we've really connected, and could we get more time together? And he said, I love your heart. I love what you're doing for the next generation. I'm too busy. Maybe in a different season. I might retire in a few years, but I just can't. And so that night, I had his number, and that night I'm like, all right, I have to go into trickery mode to get him, for the kingdom, by the way. And so I'm like, I know he likes running, so I'm gonna text him, hey, Raymond, is there any chance that I could ever run with you? I noticed that you like to run. Also, by the way, I know I've had a lot of slides. I wanted to show this if you guys do want any of those slides. But I said, Raymond, I wanted to see if you would like, if I could run with you. And I said, I'm trying to get into running. And of course I'm not. But again, I'm lying for the kingdom. And it's so crazy how he changed his tune, because all of a sudden he's like, oh, you're trying to get into running? Like we love converting people into our hobbies. Like if you like the trigger or the green egg or whatever it is that you like, it's great. And so all of a sudden he's like, let's do it. If you're serious, meet me tomorrow at 4. And I'm like, gosh, why do y'all have to do it at this time? Like, do you know how weird it sounds to set an alarm for 3 something? Like, that's a nap, and then I'm going out to run in the cold. But I've got to show up. What am I going to tell him? Like, that's when I pray and fast. Like, I go to downtown Dallas where his office is, and I'm at the skyscraper area where he's at, and he runs around the city at 4. And I'd love to tell y'all this was an amazing first story with him, but that bro did not even show up. He didn't show up, and then by 5 a.m., I'm still around, like, hey, are you still coming? And then by like 5:15, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go home, maybe something happened. And then about 8 a.m., I get a text from him saying, I am so sorry, I'm seeing all your texts. When I said 4, I should have been clear, I meant 4 p.m. Honestly, y'all, I was like, yes. I was glad because I'm like, this man now knows I will show up if you need me at 4. And again, you gotta find some young people who are faithful, available, teachable, and hungry. And if you're young in this room, you have to be faithful, available, teachable, and hungry, or it's just not gonna work. It does not matter how much availability and vulnerability a discipler gives if the young person isn't hungry and faithful to show up. It just doesn't matter. And so I ended up running half marathons and different things with this guy. And he, for 3 years, really poured into me. And I ended up getting, I call it a participation trophy whenever you go through a half marathon, because I got 660th place. And he said, now you get a medal. And I said, you know, your generation always makes fun of us for participation trophies. I feel like 660th place isn't good. He's like, yeah, but you did it. Like I participated? Anyway, I always like to joke about participation trophies because y'all made fun of us for them for years when you're the ones who gave it to us. And so I want to close with man, there's 2 things I want to close with. One is I want to give you a vision for discipleship, and I want to tell a story. This is Scott from Bellevue in the Seattle area, and he had this picture where it was basically the man who discipled him, the man he discipled, and the man that guy discipled. And I know his disciple, the guy in the blazer, and I was like, can I take a picture of this? Like, this is my goal. Like this, they call it goals in the next generation. Like this is goals for me, is to get to heaven one day and I meet people that are disciples of my disciples of my disciples. That I think Jesus would be proud of. That I went to go and make disciples. And so I want you to assess, where are you in your discipleship journey? Because we're all on a faith journey. Some of you are learners, even if you've been in church forever. If you haven't committed to someone younger in the faith, just spiritually a couple steps behind you, then you might still be receiving, but the gospel is not supposed to terminate on us. You are a leader once you start pouring into someone and you make that commitment clear. It could be mentoring them, it could be discipling them. Whatever you do, just having some intentionality there. Some of you might think, oh, I am a leader. I lead this company, or I'm a manager of 20 people, or I do this, or I lead a Bible study, or whatever. There's the world's version of leadership, and then I would say there's Jesus' version of leadership. And when Jesus started leading, it's when he started making disciples. We don't even know what he was doing until he started making disciples. John Maxwell says, if you think you're a leader, but no one is following you, then you're technically only taking a walk. Walking is a healthy thing to do. So I think go ahead, take a walk, just invite someone to walk with you. Like, I think y'all are getting the picture. Just include someone who is your shadow. You become a disciple maker when you disciple someone who disciples someone who disciples someone. And then you become a multiplier when you pour into someone who pours into someone who pours into someone. Again, we don't have a next-gen problem. We have a discipleship problem. I want to tell y'all a story, and then I want to give y'all a question to consider. Basically, I said I'm not a Cowboys fan. I once got mentored by a Dallas Cowboy. His name was Chad Hennings. He played back when the Cowboys were good, back in, I think it was in the 90s. And he told me this story, this was like 7 to 8 years ago, where he got a new dog for his kids, who were children at the time, like 5 and 6 years old. I think the dog's name was DeSoto, a little puppy. And DeSoto, the puppy, was like young people are, a lot of passion, loose cannon, going to the bathroom, jump. You know, some of y'all have the dogs that like jump all over people when they come in the door, goes to the bathroom in the house, bites and chews on stuff, rips up the yard. It was puppy stuff, if you will. But then that puppy started getting older, the kids started getting older, and all of a sudden it was 10 years, 15 years older, and that puppy was kind of an older dog, a chronologically superior dog, if you will. And that dog started losing a lot of its energy, and the kids were now teenagers, and the kids were like, sorry, not Chad, but like, hey, Dad, DeSoto is like, doesn't do anything anymore. Now DeSoto is just like, kind of boring. Just, he used to jump on people and bark whenever someone comes through the door. Now he's on his mat, someone comes through the door, and he just kind of lifts his head. He's like, what's up? And then goes back down. He's just in a routine. And he goes to eat, and he goes to sleep, and he just sits there all day. And they took the DeSoto to the vet, and apparently DeSoto was apparently going to potentially die in the next couple months, the vet was saying. And the kids were like, can we please get another puppy? And I think that would be great for DeSoto to have a friend. So they get another puppy, Bo. And all of a sudden, this old dog that was close to death had this little punk puppy that was like bothering him and keeping doing energy, like, and basically, all of a sudden, DeSoto is like showing him where to eat, where to go to the bathroom, where to do all this stuff. And they said all of a sudden, DeSoto, the older dog, was like coming alive and starting to do things they had not seen that older dog do for many, many years. And the dog ended up living, I believe he said like 4 to 6 more years, actually. And they have a saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I would say you can give an old dog a new purpose or a new puppy. Because what they said is, Chad was like, the reason I think that dog didn't die is because that little dog would not let that dog die. And I'm telling you, it's mutually beneficial when we do relationships together. Like, we get, as a next generation, so much out of it, but I found overall, so does the older generation. It brings new purpose and energy and veracity. Like, add the next generation to anything, and it brings new life. So I can't encourage you all enough, like, go and make disciples. I am who I am because of discipleship. I am where I am because of discipleship. 2 weeks into getting saved, I got discipled by someone older, and I thought discipleship was normal until I realized not everyone else got discipled when they're young. But I would say was how I became who I became, because I got saved and quickly got discipled. So I'd ask these 3 questions. I want to give you just like 2 minutes to talk about this with your neighbor. Is one of these 2 questions is, who are you pouring into and who is pouring into you? And then what is the best next step towards discipleship for you? And so we'll close out, and Chi-Chi's going to lead us in the last song. But just think about and talk to your neighbor, the same person you're talking to. Is maybe you're feeling like, oh, I want to ask someone to disciple me. Or maybe you're thinking about, I think I know who I should pour into. Or I hope it's clear of what a next step for each of you guys could be. And so I'm going to say a quick prayer and then give you guys a second to talk to your neighbor. Holy Spirit, would you highlight who it is to pour into us? Would you highlight who it is who we could pour into? And especially, would you highlight to us what a next step in your faith journey and your great commission could look like for us? In Jesus' name, amen. Talk to your neighbor.